The Honourable Nick Smith.
Mr Chairman, there's a couple of points I'd like to respond to in the debate. And the first of those is the accusation from Claire Curran that she made the assertion that the government, and particularly myself, has just been talking hot air. Well, let's just go through the dialogue that's occurred in the debate. In her earlier contribution, she made a great deal and objected to the fact that the Minister of Broadcasting has decided not to provide additional funding to Television New Zealand for the funding of Channel 7. I pointed out that, well, actually the previous government, in agreeing to fund that channel, said that it was for a limited period and that then Television New Zealand would be able to run it from its commercial revenues. And I had a very simple challenge for the member, Claire Curran. Well, if she objects to National and the government not funding it, would Labor fund it? And the members were absolutely silent, could give this House absolutely no assurance at all. And my simple point to her was, well, this is the case of the pot calling the kettle black. If there is hot air, it's a party standing up in this Parliament saying it's outrageous, it's awful, that the government's not going to fund something, but we're not sure whether we would or we wouldn't. Well, I have to say to the member, that is hot air. Can I tell something else to the member that is hot air? And that was the charter that the previous government had within TVNZ. Everybody has come in the broadcasting sector to the conclusion that Labour's charter was nothing more than hot air. And I would say to that member, before she asserts such claims in the House, to consider that point further and give us some idea, despite all the rhetoric about supporting the creative industries, where was it when it became a call between the creative industries and the filming of The Hobbit in New Zealand? Well, I think Damien O'Connor had the answer. That is that the self-interested trade unionists went ahead of the national interest and the interest of New Zealand's creative industries. Now, I do want to also respond to the question from Jacinda Ardern about where is the definition in this bill of file sharing. Well, it's quite simply set out on page 4 of the bill, included in part 1, Mr Chairman. It sets out quite clearly what the definition of file sharing is, and I'd further say that yes, that does include an attachment that does involve the sharing of files. Now, I was also very concerned, Mr Chairman, that members opposite took offence at my enthusiasm for Dave Doman, for Bick Runga, for Hayley Westerner and other great New Zealand artists. Well, Mr Chairman, I have to confess to being enthusiast for all of those great New Zealand artists, and I'm surprised that members opposite would be anything other than enthusiasts for those wonderful New Zealand musicians whose creative rights and copyright this House should seriously consider as protection of their copyrights because those creative industries are so important to New Zealand.
The question is the member calling? Claire Curran. Order. I'm calling Claire Curran.
Mr Chair. Mr Chair, what we've just heard is another lot of hot air. And, you know, the Minister is dissembling, shall we say, doesn't understand the issues, can't enter into debate around the substantive issues around this bill, and won't address the underlying major issues which I was attempting to address. And I would like to continue with talking to the House about the market failure, which is essentially the most important issue which this country, this Parliament should be addressing in terms of how we can, as a nation, create our and encourage and foster and support our creative content which is essentially our cultural identity, and ensure that it is available to our citizens and to the rest of the world. And that also to enable and to encourage the new business models to occur, which will enable people to use the internet, which is our future, and enable them to share content legally. And when my colleague on the Select Committee, Jonathan Young, earlier talked about that he is a good guy, talked about the fact that the future, we are meeting the future, or the future is meeting us, I think is what he said. I wrote no in my notebook, because essentially the future is already happening, and what is happening with this legislation is that it's behind the eight ball. And while Labor has supported it, because we support the fundamental principles of copyright and the importance of protecting the creative content that our people and our nation create, and that should be protected, we also know that what is happening and the behaviour that is happening out there in the world is and that there is a fundamental market flaw. So I just want to go back to David Farrar's submission, where he said that it ignores where the damage, that the reports around damages and being in the billions assumes that every single download of a work is a sale that would otherwise have occurred, which ignores the fact that many downloaders try before they buy, or in other words, download to see if they really like something, and if they do, then purchase it legally. This is not to condone such acts. As every submitter came before, the Select Committee is not condoning these acts. They're describing what is happening in reality, what our children are doing, what our friends are doing, what apparently none of us are doing, but what just about every person we know has got family members who have done. But to point out that the assumptions over economic damage are unwarranted. In Australasia, the most recent statistics from the International Association of the Phonographic Industry show that the music revenues are up 3.5%, physical sales are down 2.4%, digital sales are up 41.4%, and performance rights are up 8.6% in 2009. And APRA reported that in 2008 and 2009, distributions to music creators increased by 10%. At the same time, Mr. Chair, and I hope that the Minister is listening, in the movie industry, global ticket sales were up 7.6% during the worst recession in 70 years. So what the point of these statistics are is to put the claims of the industry groups into proportion, which is to say that there is that the sales, the legitimate sales of content on the internet are going up. That more and more content is being sold, and the claims that illegal file sharing are causing such damage are simply false. And what has happened is that there is a market failure, and here I am lecturing the national government on market failures. There is a market failure, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, the member's had her calls. Members, we now come to the vote on Part 1. First, we have an amendment in the name of Gareth Hughes, Clause 7, and his type-stripped amendment is to omit new sections 122O, 122B and 122PA. The question is that the amendment be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary will say no. No. The noes have it. I'll ask the clerk to conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
58 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
42 votes opposed.
Green Party.
9 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
4 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
Toko whai whakaheana.
Progressive.
1 voted.
One vote opposed.
United Future.
One vote opposed.
Honourable Chris Carter.
One vote in favour.
Hone Harawira.
One vote in favour.
Members, the ayes are 11, the noes are 110. The amendment is not agreed to. We now come to the Minister's amendments as set out on SOP number 230. The question is that the amendments be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. We now come to the question on Part 1 as amended, stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Members, we now come to debate on Part 2, debate on clauses 9 and 10. Question is that Part 2 stand part. We have the Minister's amendments as set out on SOP number 230. The question is that the Minister's amendments be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that Part 2 is amended, stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Members, we now come to clauses 1 to 3. Question is that clauses 1 to 3 stand part. Clause 1. The question is that clause 1 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. We now have the Minister's amendments as set out on SOP number 230. The question is that the Minister's amendments be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that clause 2 is amended, stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Question now is that clause 3 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. I will report this bill with amendment.
House is resumed. Mr Chairman.
Mr Speaker, the committee has considered the Copyright Infringing File Sharing Amendment Bill and reports it with amendment. Mr Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. This bill is set down for third reading forthwith. Honourable Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Copyright Infringing File Sharing Amendment